everyone. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Good Chats. I am your host, Jenny Landon, and tonight we are going to talk about community and what it means to really connect with the people that we share this space with. Before we get started, I want to make sure I thank our sponsors. We could not do this show with all of you. I want to especially thank the Kowalskis in Shoreview, as well as Doug Deseret Construction and the Ever Eve in Roseville. And I know I say this every time, but honestly, I hate giving the clothes back. It is so much fun going there. If you've never been to Ever Eve and you live close to one, go check them out. They have incredible stylists. I have no fashion sense at all. And they guide me in every way. So I absolutely love the team over there in Roseville. Thank you guys so much. But okay, on to business. It's time for the show. And I'm really excited because I have Alex Morrall here with me tonight. And Alex and I actually did a podcast for you just last week. So, oh my gosh, Alex. So you are the founder of the Twin Cities Wellness Collective.
Yeah,
that is how you and I first met and connected. Why did you start this? And let me start by saying too, you're not originally from Minnesota.
No.
Where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm from Denver, Colorado.
And how did it feel to move to Minnesota?
Yeah, so I came here for college.
Yeah.
So I went to McAllister College. And that's a very international place, and there's a large student population of international students. So I didn't feel like at that point it was really that different. It was pretty welcoming.
Yeah.
But it's kind of once I graduated and like lived here and kind of experienced the Minnesota
void
culture at large. Sometimes
everyone knows Minnesota is my happy place. I have a sign in my house that says so. I love Minnesota, but it can be a hard place to move to.
Yeah. Because
the people here, they are so loyal to their family and their high school friends and their college friends. You have to prove that you are worthy to be let into that circle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it took some time. And I tell my wife this sometimes, but and it helps that she's from here because it kind of like I had an in some senses, but it did take some getting used to and some kind of putting yourself out there over and over and over again to
I totally know.
Get people.
So this is our second time to live here. And I made sure when we moved back this time, I was always like, I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy to be back. And then like, oh, what neighborhood did you grow up in? Texas.
Yep, I've got that.
But everyone they thought I was a Minnesotan, which I am at heart. This is the first place I've ever felt like this was my home. And so I absolutely love Minnesota, but if you're ever going to move to Minnesota, you need to come here knowing that you need to prove yourself, right? Like these are good people, and before they welcome you to their home and to their inner circle, they want to know that you're worth it. So don't get angry about it, just accept it and work hard at proving yourself. And then once you're in, you're in. I mean, we moved away. We were here for, 6 years. And then we moved away for 6 years. And when we moved back, I mean, those friends were still right there. They then were mad at us because we chose to buy a house in a different part of town. but like they are very loyal.
Yeah,
but okay, but so why the Wellness Collective? Because I love, when you and I met for the first time, we talked about this. Why did you start the Wellness Collective?
Yeah, so the story is kind of twofold. So one is when I was a junior in college, I was home on winter break, and there was a school shooting at my high school.
Back in Colorado?
Back at Colorado. And my brother and my sister were still in school there. And that was it was a pretty traumatic event for the community at large, because it's just like this place of safety is suddenly not safe anymore. And it was an interesting and kind of traumatic time for not only me and my family, but for kind of everybody that was involved there. And in addition to that, something that I found kind of inspiring in that moment was there was one girl who was killed, and at her memorial service, her dad forgave the shooter and forgave that individual, and that has always stuck with me, because I'm like, it's just pretty amazing to see somebody who was harmed in that way forgive the person that created the harm. And I was struck by that. And kind of a few years down the line, I got to a place where I had graduated and was thinking more about, well, what can I do in Minnesota? And I had read this book by Tom Rath and Jim Harter, who work with Gallup. The book is
I love Gallup.
WellBeing, the 5 essential elements. And the elements that they lay out in the book are social, occupational, physical, financial, and community. And
but you also told me, I'm going to interject for a second,
yes,
you would add one.
I would. And I think spiritual is the 6th one, and some people would say that's maybe alignment with purpose in some sense. And other models of well-being include that. And the book doesn't, for whatever reason. But I think that is an important part of being truly well. And but one of the statistics that or one of the findings that they found in this study is that 66% of people were doing well in only one of the 5 areas, and 7% were thriving in all 5. And that's a broad study. It's 150 countries. But I'm like, well, what can we do here in Minnesota to help people be more well? Because coming from this experience of going through what happened in Denver, or Littleton, Colorado, which is a suburb of Denver, and not far from Columbine, and I feel that communities that are well are more protected against something like that, and maybe it doesn't prevent it, but I think it gives it a good shot.
Maybe, yeah. And I know you and I talked about that. Like, that really resonated with me, because that's a lot of the work that I do with Growing Out of Darkness is if we can teach wellness, then we're going to reduce the risk for crisis. And you had a very similar opinion on if we can have wellness, then we're going to reduce the risk for these shootings that are taking place. Yeah, I mean, complete alignment.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think the more well that a person is, not only is it's because wellness isn't just for you. Wellness is something that is communal. And there's the word collective in the Twin Cities Wellness Collective was intentional. Because I really think that it's important for all of us to act together to help each other to be more well, because I don't think you can be well without
Complete
having
on your own.
We
talked about that on the podcast, right? Like, you asked me, you're like, if someone's in a really dark place, how do they get out of it? And I was like, it's the chicken or the egg, because if you have no one and you're in this dark place, you have to find something within yourself to come out, or at least put that energy, that request of like, please send me someone who can help me. You have to be open to that. But I think the people who have the best chance at true healing is when they're surrounded by other healthy people that are pushing and encouraging and loving them. You know how I feel about love. Like, it's about love.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the more, I think we talked about on the podcast, it takes a village for a person to feel well. And it's give, take. It's never, and sometimes you're taking more than you're giving, and when you're at a place where you feel well, you're maybe giving more than you're taking.
Yeah.
But it ebbs and flows, and that's something that's come up on the podcast a lot, is that we're never like done with the journey. It's not point A to point B type of thing. It's a continuum. And how are we continuing to be more well and move along? And I think having a supportive community helps you to continue to advance along that continuum.
Absolutely, because I know, we've lived so many different cities over the last 20 years, and I can only tell you, I mean, there were 2 streets that I've lived on out of the, I think, 7 that we've lived in the last 20 years. I knew my neighbors.
Yeah.
I knew my neighbors to the point that I still know them today, right? Like, we still exchange Christmas cards. We still get in touch if we're visiting, that area. We make a point to stay in contact with them. But so many other places I've lived, it's just like you pull up to your house, you go in your garage, you close up, you never see them, right? And I think that we lose a piece of ourselves by doing that, by not being in touch with the people around us. I mean, because I think it does take away that sense of safety, that sense of knowing that someone's watching out for you. And I'm not saying that I didn't have any neighbors. I think I've been really fortunate every place we've lived that we've had at least one neighbor. But only 2 places where we've lived where we had like a guide of the whole street, right? We knew who lived in every single house, what their kids' names were, their pets' names, like we had everything, And I would love to see more of that. And I feel like that's kind of like, that's one of the things you've been working on and trying to develop. What are you seeing that's helping?
Yeah. So I think it's people that are willing to put themselves out there, and people that are willing to take steps to be different, because it's kind of, we're in an interesting place where if you look at this stat I brought up earlier, where only 66% of people are doing well in one of those 5 areas, well, then being wholly well is uncommon.
Yeah.
So you have to engage in uncommon behaviors to be well. And sometimes I think that means being uncomfortable and acting in a way that people wouldn't expect. And it's not like offensive or weird. It's just like people don't have their neighbors over for dinner anymore. Like, what does that look like?
Right. We did one of our things, and actually my kids, they don't really remember it. They were so little, but one of our streets that we lived on where we were so close, we had Flamingo Friday. And it was started long before we moved in by one of our neighbors. It was this, they would put a flamingo, it was like a plastic yard flamingo, right? In their yard, and whoever had the flamingo in their yard was basically saying, okay, this Friday, happy hour in our yard. And so we just would all bring over snacks and drinks, and ultimately there ended up being, I think it was 5 of us were 4 of us were pregnant, but one was with twins. So 5 babies were born within, it was like 3 weeks of each other. It was something in the water. But we all were like right in the houses together. So Flamingo Friday almost was always at either my house or my neighbor's house. And then we had the baby monitors so we could hear the babies. But it was for a couple hours on the Fridays when the weather was good. But it made such a tremendous impact in feeling grounded and connected and safe. And I would love to see more of that. More people reaching out and, showing up at their neighbor's house. Like I used to, when we lived in Las Vegas, we had this guy that lived across the street from us who was incredibly scary. And I mean, he was he was a good guy. He just yelled a lot at his children, which they probably deserved it. And he yelled a lot at me because...
Did you deserve it?
No, I didn't. I mean, yes, maybe, but his garage door was open and the light was blinking.
Uh-huh.
Which obviously someone thought they closed it and it popped back up, and so it's flashing, and it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I can't go to bed. Like, this, I didn't even know them yet, but I was like, their garage door is open. This is not okay. And so I went over and I like knocked, and then I rang the doorbell. I'm like, please, someone just answer the door. And all of a sudden I hear a window open above me. What the do you want? And I was like, your garage door is open. He's like, so just close it and like run out. Yeah, something was wrong with their garage door. So I tried it. I really did, because he scared me. And I tried it, but it didn't work. And so then I'm like back ringing the door. What do you want? This happened on more than one occasion. Yeah. And my husband was like, why are you going over there? But to me, it mattered, right? Like, I would want someone to come to my house. I would want my neighbor to come and tell me, hey, you're not safe.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And sometimes that's what it takes, is even though people are pushing you away, doesn't mean they don't want you to be in their life.
Yeah. Oh, he ended up giving me his phone number eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
See, we bonded.
So it just takes some time sometimes. It's just like you just have to keep persevering. So yeah, I like that story.
Thanks. So what has been your favorite part of working on the Wellness Collective?
Yeah, so I like to think of myself sort of like a curator of different projects or different work that people are doing in the Twin Cities. And so I think my favorite part is just getting to meet people that are really working hard to make a difference and make people's lives better, and getting to witness that and help them put that work out there. So whether that's what you're doing here with Good Chats and growing out of darkness, or what other individuals that I've come across, how they're helping people feel more aligned, or just like raising awareness about how to do things better when you're at work, so you feel more productive and feel healthier and are taking better care of yourself. So I'm just inspired by the people that I get to interact with.
Yeah.
And experience that. So I think it's been really fun.
How long have you had this up and running at this point?
Yeah, it's been probably 3 or 4 years.
So I've lived in Minnesota for 5 years. Yeah. The second time that we've been here for 5 years. And I feel like I was introduced to your group, I mean, maybe a year or 2 years into it. I mean, I feel like, you've been around for a little while. So have you seen any evolution or any changes because of things that you're doing, like within the community?
Yeah, I think people are becoming more receptive to this idea of well-being and taking steps to living a better life and having better relationships. Because I think in the past it was we kind of all just go about our own way, and I'm generalizing a little bit, but I also believe that people are starting to realize that there needs to be a sense of rootedness. And this was, I mean, there's different authors that I've read that talk about rootedness in the United States and how it used to be something that was pretty common, because people would go to, I don't know, high school basketball games or centers of worship or different community centers. And now people are a lot more isolated, so they're on their phones or they're kind of on their own, and it's something that's chronic in American society, right at this moment.
Yeah, not just here.
No,
not just here.
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think people are starting to see that and say, I can't just be on my phone or have relationships through Facebook or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I need to go out into the community, and there's something that happens when you're face to face with someone that's different.
Yeah.
And or if you're with a group of people, and I understand that it can be difficult to sometimes like put yourself in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm maybe more on the introverted side, but I think there's ways that people can like go out and meet people, even if it's just one-on-one.
Yeah.
And still like harness some really powerful relationships. And
I think you bring up a really good point. My sister is an introvert, and she talks about this, is just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you have to be, right? Like, I mean, look at you. Like, you've created this. I mean, how many people are in the Wellness Collective at this point?
Yeah, there's somewhere around 4,000.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I know last time it was a significant number. And how many podcasts have you guys done at this point?
We released number 80 on Monday.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, for an introvert, because I think there's a lot of people who get in their own way, right? And they believe that because they're an introvert, or they've been raised to think that they're an introvert, maybe they're not even, but they were just told their whole lives they were, because maybe they felt anxious or shy around other people. That's not even what an introvert is. You know, like an introvert truly means that you recharge when you're alone, right? An extrovert recharges around other people. And I think there's a spectrum, right? Because I'd say most of my life I was an extrovert, and I still am, totally. But yet I have times where I'm like, and I'm done. You know, I can't be in that space. And especially the energy in the space, if it's a really negative, toxic environment, I can't stay there. I cannot be there. But I think, like, encouraging people to push past that discomfort, that anxiety, or that belief of like, oh, I can't go out because this is who I am, and I withdraw. But to say, you know what, it's worth it, because I might meet someone who changes my life.
Right.
And I feel like you've been doing that.
Right. And I think you have to put yourself in a place where you're a little uncomfortable to grow and to move forward.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can grow or achieve more or just even achieve, like reach higher levels of well-being, if you will, without going through some form of being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
I can tell you, as someone who grew 6 inches in one summer, it was incredibly painful. I mean, brutal. So yeah, I think, you know, you think you want to be 6 feet tall, like, be ready for some hurt, right?
Yeah.
But I think to your point, like, for you to grow, to be your best self, and I think our best self today isn't our best self for tomorrow, right? I think every day we have the opportunity to be even better, but it requires us to constantly be in a position where we're being vulnerable, we're putting ourselves out there in a way that's uncomfortable and a little painful.
Yeah, and I think there's always a force of resistance that is in our lives that's kind of pointing us towards stasis, maybe.
Yeah.
And you have to be cognizant of that and know that it's there.
Yeah, well, I think it's really easy to be comfortable.
Right.
Even if being comfortable means you're miserable.
Yes.
Isn't it crazy? So, like, my daughter, love you, daughter, oftentimes will say how much she hates her school, right? She hates it. And sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. But I've said to her, okay, well, let's find a different school. Let's find a better school that's more suited to your needs. And she won't. Right? Because she's like, nope, I'd rather stay where I know what to expect than to go somewhere new. Even if going somewhere new could actually be everything she needs. And she's at an age and at a point, and we're working with her school in a way that I'm kind of like, you know what, it is what it is. We're staying here, we are gonna navigate this to the best of our ability and make it the best situation we can. But I do think it's interesting that she would rather stay miserable than to try something new. And because she's made that stance, I'm like, well, if you're going to stay there, then you don't get to be miserable, right? We're going to find a way to make every class a positive experience. And we're working on that. And she's now, I mean, this week has been the best we've seen her because of some dramatic changes we're making. So we still made changes, but that were uncomfortable, but it's working out really well.
Yeah.
So.
And I think you always have a choice. You can choose to be miserable or not.
Absolutely.
No matter what the circumstance, even if it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, for instance, tomorrow she has to do behind the wheel driving with like an actual instructor. She's like, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to. And what if they're not nice? And what if? And I was like, you know what? Focus on what it is that you want, which is freedom from your parents, right? Like, focus on that. So who cares if the teacher is horrible, right? Who cares? Just focus on what it is that you really want and put your energy into that so it makes the situation exactly what you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're coming to an end. So tell me your journey, everything you've been through, what you've done with the Wellness Collective. What is the lesson or the idea that you really want to leave the audience thinking about?
I think the lesson is never stop learning from other people because you don't know who you're going to meet or who could change your life, and you need to be aware enough and open-minded enough to know that anyone you meet has the opportunity to help you, and you have the opportunity to help them. So it's kind of a reciprocal thing in nature. And I also want to say that well-being is more than just being happy.
Yeah, you end every podcast with what does well-being mean to you?
Yes.
What does well-being mean to you?
Yeah.
Since you ask everybody else that's on your podcast, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so well-being to me, so there's this Greek word, eudaimonia.
Okay,
and
so glad you said it and not me. Okay.
And it's often translated to mean happiness. And when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, we all know the line, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Only you have it memorized. But okay, keep going.
And so the pursuit of happiness is something that I've thought a little bit about and done some research on, and I'm not a Greek scholar, but Thomas Jefferson was well indoctrinated with the Enlightenment thinkers, and specifically John Locke. And the Enlightenment thinkers were well acquainted with the Greek thinkers, Aristotle, who kind of thinks a lot with about eudaimonia.
Okay.
And so eudaimonia is more than just happiness, it's actualizing your potential.
Oh, I like that.
So
that's way better than the pursuit of happiness.
Right. So
that's the pursuit of your potential.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So it's right there in our founding language.
Wow.
Like well-being is right there. And happiness in Jefferson's time was more taken to mean that than
what we perceive
to be happiness.
Yeah, because I've heard a lot of people say it should be changed to the pursuit of joy. Because joy means something much more deep and intrinsic than happiness. But it's our perception of what happiness means.
Right.
And you just completely shifted that for me, and I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so we are just about out of time, and tonight we actually have a special dedication of Growing Out of Darkness. I actually asked Alex if he personally would dedicate this episode, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes. So I'd like to dedicate this episode to my sister, who was in the shooting that I talked about. Her name is Nicole. If you're watching, I really admire your courage and your strength to go through a moment like that and continue to move forward despite all you've been through. And I think you embody a lot of what I've talked about tonight by continuing to move yourself forward and think about making yourself or putting yourself probably in a lot of uncomfortable situations to move towards a life that you feel more well and safe in again. And I'd also like to dedicate this to really anyone that's been through a moment of like a school shooting or any sort of mass violence event, because they're really traumatic, and I admire your ability to move past that and learn from it and continue to grow.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I appreciate you being here, and I thank all of our audience for joining us and for joining us at home. And thank you again to our sponsors. And until next time, please remember to be good to yourself and to others. That was awesome.